I'll be talking to you about decision making from the standpoint of the individuals involved in the process of decision making, rather than from the standpoint of what is the model that we're using today, or the particular application stack we might be using today. Does that help answer the question a little bit?
Yes, yes, it does. It does perfectly. It does. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you.
Yeah. So for everybody, this session and next session, we're going to be focusing on how decisions get made and how you are involved in influencing decision makers. The third session from now, we will start working specifically on how you should prepare for your interviews and how you should prepare for jobs. So these next 2 sessions, I want you to start thinking about how you relate to the person interviewing you, how you relate to the organization you work in. We've talked a little bit about that so far, but mostly we've been focusing on how do people make decisions at all using data. Moving forward now, this session and next session, we're going to focus on how do people use data to influence someone. And in particular, I'm going to talk about how you are expected to show up in an organization as a data scientist. So before I go any further into that, I was just sort of answering a question about what we're doing. Welcome, everybody. Good to see, thanks for the hi, Brian. Good to see faces. Yeah, Kevin, Gerald, glad to see you. Very good. Good to see everyone. For some reason, some of your names are not showing up. If you're on Zoom, you can hover over your own screen. You'll get 3 little dots. You click on the 3 little dots, and one of them will say, one of the options that comes down will say rename. You can change your name if you want to. Good to see you, David, Rufaya, Stephanie. Wonderful to see all of you. All right, so I'm going to jump in. I know we have a short amount of time, and we'll do our best. Brian, I see you don't have the webcam. Yeah, Rufaya, all of us are already happy to see your face. Brian, I want you to think ahead, right? All of this is about preparing you for interviews and preparing you for your jobs. If you are interviewing with someone and you don't have a webcam, they're going to have less of a personal connection with you. And even if you are more skillful than some of the people competing for that job, they're not going to feel like they can relate to you as easily as the person who's competing for that job who has the webcam. So I encourage you to get that webcam set up. This, for me, by the way, all of this is part of your practice. A lot of your interviews you may have via webcam. So keep wanting to encourage you to think about how whatever we're doing here relates directly to what you're going to do in your interviews as well as in your jobs. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you, Wamuyu, Nahum. Can I get some volunteers in the Google document? I would like one for note-taking and one for all the tracking stuff. So if you want to just write straight into the Google document we use for notes, feel free to do that. And I'm going to put it in there today. Oh, great. OK, I see Brian is ready to do note-taking. Brian, I'll put your name here. And if I can get somebody to offer to do the Google Doc, the tracking Google document, that would be great. And then when we do the breakout, OK, great. Thanks, David. So when we do the breakout, David, I will talk with you. Actually, David, you did the tracking last time. I want to keep giving people an opportunity. Is anyone else interested in doing the tracking? All right, great. Yeah, so I will move you first. So we'll move you, you'll do the tracking. When we do the breakout, I'll stay with you. All right. So first thing we're going to talk about today is influencing decisions. So all of you took some time to use data to make your own decisions, I hope, in this last week. Actually, give me a thumbs up. Did you try this past week any of the techniques we used, we talked about, to influence how you made a decision? Give me a thumbs up if you did. or, and maybe even type in the chat what you used. Got one? I'll put a thumbs up. I know that I did. All right, got a few. Does anyone want to talk, anyone want to share something they were able to do over the last 7 days? How they made a decision differently, or how they better informed the decision they were making using data? Can someone share? I'll go first. After we talked about my fire example, I realized that I could do some more analysis on what is the likelihood of having to rush out of the house very quickly. And so I looked at some of the warnings, the previous information about how quickly other counties had to evacuate. And then I discussed with people around me, and we had a group conversation around the likelihood that a thunderstorm would lead to a lightning fire, because the fires we're in right now are being caused by low rain and really high lightning. And so we looked at the data around that. And it turns out that it's not that likely that a fire would start right next to us. So we actually would get a pretty fair warning. And so I assumed I had at least half an hour to pack, which meant I kept more of my emergency supplies. Oh, you can't see them. Well, you know what? I'm going to be personable. This is not the professional environment, although I don't want you to do this when you're on your interviews. So that's my emergency supplies. I got a bunch of food that I would stick in the car. So I'm leaving them in my room rather than leaving them in the car. Okay, so that's my example of the decision I made. And that way that food doesn't go bad and I get to eat it if we don't evacuate, which I've been doing this week. So anyone else have an example they want to share?
I have an example. There's one that I posted in the group, but I think everyone has read that. Let me go with another one. My Murphy Jiu-Jitsu was, I'm writing a proposal about some project that I'm doing. And it's a lot of work getting to decide what the project is, how the proposal is supposed to be, and the outline. So using Murphy Jiu-Jitsu, I thought about what if I didn't get the funding that I wanted for that project proposal. Would I be shocked without outcome? And okay, I wouldn't be shocked at first. And then I decided to put in a plan to divide the work into various days. And I tried to see if it went wrong, if I didn't get the funding for that project proposal, how would I react? And I was shocked a bit. That means I need to put more work in, but yeah, it's heading in the right direction.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's great. Has anyone else tried Murphy Jitsu? Oh, my friends, I highly encourage you to try it. To me, this is the core of Bayesian thinking. Great, Stephanie. I'm glad to see that. By the way, it's good to see your face, Stephanie.
Sir, please, a little about Matisu.
Sorry, my friend. If you missed last week's session, because we have so much content today, I'm not going to repeat it. But maybe you can ask somebody who's on the call, or you can watch the recording, which should be posted. Did Prosper post the recording by any chance? Does anyone know? No? Okay, we don't know.
I'll go and watch it, sir.
We can follow up with him. Oh, he did? Okay, wonderful. Great. So yeah, check out the recording, and then the notes are in the Google document as well. You should get some information there. So for all of you, if you know what we're talking about, please try it. If you don't know what we're talking about, watch the the recording or check out the notes. Okay, great. So what about data? Who used some kind of particular Fermi modeling? I saw someone in the chat in the Slack had mentioned they had done Fermi modeling recently. I think it was, oh yeah, it was Kevin. That was great. I really love that example of figuring out how likely it is for you to get to meet the dentist right away. And I think Kevin's not on with us, but still a great example. Did anyone use Fermi estimations? Oh, Kevin, you are here. I don't know why you're not showing up on my screen. All right, Kevin, that was a great example. I'm not sure why you're not showing up on my screen. All right, no one else used a Fermi estimation. Let me see. Did anyone see Kevin's example in the Slack? Yeah. Okay. Great. Does that make sense to people? Could somebody give me a summary of what Kevin did and how you might do something similar? Oh, my friends. Okay. Just remember, right? One of your great opportunities to demonstrate your skillfulness in communication, which includes communicating data as a data scientist, is right here. And this is a place you get to practice. If you get into a lot of corporate environments, you will have a room full of people, and many of them you will not know. And your capacity to be intelligent and share really speaks volumes for your confidence and whether or not someone should trust you. Nahom, please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I was reluctant to speak just because I didn't have the numbers, but I was thinking of a problem that I can solve using Fermi's estimation, and that is recently we had a power transmission accident because of a flood resulted from a rain. So the problem that I was trying to tackle was uh, how many hours should I wait before making a decision to move somewhere else where there is power, something like my uncle's place or my aunt's place. So the decision is just a trade-off. I mean, if I stay, it may not come, but sometimes the power interruption is just a result of a minor technical problem, which will just uh, stay for 2 or 3 hours. But sometimes it's far more worse, and we might spend the night without electricity. So I have to find an optimal number of hours to wait for it to come. So I can use Fermi's estimation for that. But I just couldn't quite tackle it and come up with a number, an optimal number. That's why I was reluctant to speak.
Ah, okay, great. So I'm hearing you say that the place you want to try to use it is around the amount of time you would have in order to know
No.
if you no. What is the question?
So my question is, for example, if I stay and wait for it for 2 or 3 hours,
Right.
it might be fixed. But sometimes the problem is not just a minor problem, and it may not be fixed within few hours. I mean, sometimes it stays for much longer, maybe days.
Right.
So I have to find the optimal number of hours to wait for it, staying
Great.
at home. That
Great.
is not making the decision to move elsewhere.
Great. Great. Okay. So the question is, what is the optimal number of hours to stay at home versus
Yeah,
to move?
wait for it. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, great. That's a great question to have. I think that's a great question with a great decision leverage. If you know the optimal amount of time, then you don't have to worry and think about it when the power does go out, and you can spend your time effectively and just leave after you hit that optimal number of hours, right?
Yeah.
So great decision leverage. I want to keep reminding everyone, asking good questions. Part of being a good data scientist is asking good questions. Good questions, as Nahom has demonstrated here, includes good decision leverage. Can I actually improve a decision in a way that will improve the life of people involved, right? So with the information and data I have. Nahom, unfortunately, this question, optimization questions, are not really good for Fermi estimations, not in the structure we have it right now. A Fermi estimation is just going to give us, it's not going to give us a probability. It's not going to give us a, really like an optimal range in which to do something, a Fermi estimation is going to give us a more of an estimate on a specific explicit outcome. You can get to a probability, but it's better, I think, to name it as a quantity, an individual quantity. So a good place for the Fermi estimation here, if I wanted to take this problem and convert it into a Fermi estimation question, I would ask myself, what is the number of hours it takes for the power to come back if it's going to come back quickly? So I'm basically assuming, based on what you said, a binomial distribution. Give me a thumbs up if you understand a binomial distribution. Great. So if I'm assuming a binomial distribution, I have really great decision leverage because I never really know where I am on the binomial. And so I want to know if I'm on this side or if I'm on this side of the binomial distribution, right? So what I want for the Fermi estimation is to actually understand what is the midpoint, or maybe even the longer tail, maybe the 64% kind of part of the first half of the distribution, right? So if I can get that from my Fermi estimation, then I've got my optimization answer, right? So if you were to say, look, the distribution basically looks on the first half, within 4 hours, I'm capturing about 64% of the situations that fall in that first half, right? So about 32% of the overall situations. If I can say that's true if within 4 hours of waiting, and then afterwards on the second sort of side of the distribution, and maybe this has a longer tail, right? But on the second side of this distribution, I might be waiting up to like 8 hours for that midpoint, or maybe even 24 hours for that midpoint, and then the tail can go out into days. If I have something like that, then I know that 4 hours is my time within that first 32%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, actually, so it's not like actually converting it to a Fermi estimation, right? This is just tackling it using a binomial distribution.
Yeah, it's more of first asking the question of what is this probability about? And once I've got this probability question converted into, I'm looking at a distribution and I want to understand where I fall into the distribution, now I can do a Fermi estimation. And maybe then the Fermi estimation would be something like yeah, honestly, I think you're right, actually. I don't even know how to make it into a Fermi estimation. I might be able to say like 2 Fermi estimations. And so I'd say, how many instances do the power go out in a year? And then I would say, of the times that the power goes out in a year, how many instances did it go out within 10 hours? But because the Fermi estimations are working in powers of 10, I'm not gonna this is gonna be a hard one. This is probably gonna want something a little bit more precise, but it's a great question. So I appreciate you naming it. And
Thank you.
Yeah, and by the way, everyone, I want to be clear that the use of sharing your thoughts, sharing your ideas, your questions in the middle of a conversation, even if you're not, if you don't answer the question being asked in the group setting, just the engagement brings up a lot of value, right, for the person involved. So I'm going to keep on trying to hammer home to you the importance of how you communicate in an environment like this, not because I assume you'll always be on Zoom, but because I have been in so many conference meetings. I've been in so many phone calls, especially when I was working at IBM. We would be on calls with 40, 50 people, and you would only hear 5 or 6 people on the phone. But everybody on that call remembers those 5 or 6 people. And those 5 or 6 people, if they want to get work done, they want to get on a special project, they want to get a hold of the CEO. I got to work with the CEO of IBM. IBM has 400,000 employees. Very few of my colleagues met the CEO ever. I met the CEO multiple times. I only had that opportunity because I met so many vice presidents, directors, and senior managers who always heard my voice. And I always was thoughtful about what I was saying. I was very rarely correct or right or had the right answer, but I had something interesting and meaningful to contribute to the conversation. So, I really encourage you to engage with that. Also, I'm just gonna make a side note. Actually, yeah, so I'm gonna leave that there. I wanna keep hammering this point home about how important that is. So let's come back to the idea of influence. This is actually a decent segue. This is one of the ways you gain influence. Remember, as a data scientist, you might understand the statistics well. You might understand that whatever problem the company is facing fits in a binomial distribution, for example, and everyone else is talking about it like it's a normal distribution. And you might see how problematic it is to be confused about what's actually happening. And no one wants to hear you out. No one wants to hear what you have to say. So how you gain influence is really an important question. And who you need to influence is an important question. Those are the two things we're going to talk about today. Who do you need to influence, and how do you gain influence? Okay, so the question I want you to ask yourselves in the group discussions, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms in a moment here. And the question I want you to answer with one another is, how do you know who is making the decision that your analysis, your data analysis, is meant to influence? Who do you communicate with first? Give me a thumbs up if you understand this question. Okay, is there anyone with any questions around this question? I'm seeing maybe a head shake there. Anyone not sure what I'm asking you?
Trying to digest the first question.
Okay, great. Tell me, what are you understanding, David, so far, as you look at the first question?
Do you know? Okay, I'm trying to see it's addressing me as a data scientist, and I've been given a project, and the question basically is asking me to know who will make, or who will be in the upper hand on the analysis that I will do, as in who will be the head in the decision or using the data.
Sorry, David, the last sentence cut out for me. Can you say that one more time? What was the last thing you said there?
Who is, as in the top person who will engage with my data analysis and use it more to make some decision.
Yeah, that's right. I think you're on the right track there. There's a little bit more built into that conversation, but I want you to talk about it with your conversation partner. So good. I think you got the question. Okay. You got the gist of the question. Thanks, David. And then the second question, does anyone want to try, as David did just now, to reflect it back? By the way, that's a great use of talking space. So thank you for that, David. Anyone want to reflect back what they understand is the second question?
Could you repeat the second question?
Yeah, absolutely. I put it in the chat as well. Both questions are in the chat, but the second question is, who do you communicate with first? So you're doing an analysis, you've created analysis, or you're in the process of creating an analysis. How do you know who the decision maker is going to be, who is making the decision that your data analysis is influencing? And then who do you communicate with first regarding that analysis? So I'm going to leave that for you. And Gerald, is that helpful? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, it's helpful. It's helpful.
Wonderful. All right, so I'll let you talk about that in your group. You'll have about 12 minutes to discuss. Make sure that both of you get a chance to speak. And then I will see you back here in 12 minutes. Enjoy. All right, Umuyu, I think, so the two of us, let's go ahead really quickly and talk about the Google document, and I'm so curious to see if you've made any changes already.
Not yet.
No, oh, because I did not give you access to make changes. That's probably why. What is your, oh yeah, Wumuya, look at you, you're winning the totals. Do you see this?
Yes, I actually had seen it, but I checked it out last week. Let me check it out again.
Okay.
Please,
And can you give me your email in the chat? I'll add you to it.
Okay, yes, please.
Victoria, hey. Okay. And then I wonder if Victoria is not here. Let me move her conversation partner. Oh. Okay, looks like she joined. All right. Let me know when you have the document open.
Okay, okay.
The link is,
yeah, please share the link.
yeah, the link is in the notes document. I can give it to you in a second.
Okay.
Just make sure you can edit it. Great. So it's going to take a moment to let you edit, give you edit access, but at least you can see it right now.
Just trying to get it up, so just a minute.
Okay, great.
Faster. Okay, got the access.
Okay, great. So I want to make sure that this experience for you is similar to the kinds of things I would be asking teams in the past, my employees in the past when I was running a team. So one of the things I typically do is I ask people what they want to do first, right? So what do you understand is the intention of this document?
I think it's to just give a general feel of how people are engaging with the content and with the session.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the initial intention. Okay. And I think to unpack that a little bit, part of the intention as well is to, oh, by the way, the recording, oh, sorry, just so you, oh, is it cutting out?
I can't hear you. It's breaking.
Interesting. Can you hear me now?
Still breaking. I don't know if it's on my side though.
It might be on your side.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, let me know if you need a moment. I'll give you a moment to settle.
Okay. No, it's okay now. And I've gotten the document up.
Okay, great. So one of the things that is the intention of this document is to also unpack how I'm perceiving everyone in the room, right?
Okay.
And so we're talking today about decision makers, influencers. One thing we'll start getting into at some point, and we might talk a little bit about it today, but I think I want to save it for next week, is power dynamics. And I think Wumuyu, your very astute observation of the gender biases that are at play in most people's lives last week makes me comfortable or confident that you understand power dynamics already. But that being said, right, in this room, I clearly have some level of authority. And also because of my financial situation, the country I'm in, I have a lot of privilege that a lot of people don't have. So one of the things I want to really engage people in is understanding how that permeates the decisions they want to be making as a contributor to a team, you know? So like in the chat, I noticed somebody very clever actually changed their name to blank and then made a couple of jokes. And oh wait, no, actually never mind. Never mind. I thought that's what they did. That would have been more clever than what they did. But yeah, they're just sort of making some jokes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And unfortunately, that is the kind of thing that will count against you, right? Like when people see that in an environment, if they're trying to get something happening, you know, you are sort of creating an unnecessary tension there, right? So, you know, privately keeping your jokes is helpful. So now I feel stuck a little bit because I want to call attention to these things in a kind way. As a teacher, my goal is to not offend the people I'm teaching, otherwise they're less likely to learn, right? So I want to try to call attention to it, but I want to do it kindly. Similarly, all of this stuff here, I want to call attention to as, hey, here are opportunities you have that are subtle, that people won't make explicit, except for people like me who are here to teach you, you know? Oh, Brian, your partner was not in your room. I'm going to move you into another room.
Okay, yeah, I was out alone, so.
I'm sorry. Yeah, always come back here. I'll make that announcement. Okay, Brian, you should have an invite to join room number 3. Let me know if you don't see that. You might have to actually hit the breakout rooms icon on the bottom.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. So when I would love you to take a shot at, oh, sorry, and the other piece of this, so I want to tie back today's content. We're talking about decision making. Who are the decision makers that I am trying to influence with this document?
There would be Aaron, who is in charge of now the technical, the whole training for the 10 Academy. And there would be possible future employers, for the cohort.
Yeah.
Those are the two that come to the top of my head. So basically the 10 Academy management and future employees or employers as a reference point. Like if anyone ever asked for a reference, then this would be a place you could go back to.
Oh, I see. Okay, great. Great. Okay. Now I just mentioned my sort of obsession with being a teacher, right? And trying to do well as a teacher. So now remembering that my role here as a teacher and that that is, and then let me give you a little bit more information about myself. I find the hiring process to be very adversarial, and I don't like the process that most companies go through for hiring. I know that they have power that I don't have to hire you right now. So I'm going to play their game and I'm going to support you in playing and winning their game. So now hearing me say those things, do you think there are other decision makers I'm interested in influencing besides those two?
Okay. I think also the students as a decision maker themselves, because it is part of the process that you're trying to teach. These are the things that you want to teach, so you want us to move in a certain direction. Yeah, I think I'd add that and probably remove the employers.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm honestly, I didn't even think of that. Arun could use this. Actually, I thought about sharing it with him and chose not to share it with him because I just thought it wasn't really going to be meaningfully helpful. You're absolutely right. The number one decision maker for me here is the students. So I'm looking to build this out in such a way that people know that I'm paying attention. They can see the influence that's happening between us. And we'll make choices based on this. So they may make different choices, they may not. But I want them to be informed in their choices.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, yeah, I would love, how would you change this document to include this week's information?
It's either a duplicate sheet or I don't know. I was just about to ask how the structure is, like what was your inception structure, like how did you think it through when you were creating it?
Great. The real answer is what typically happens when I'm in a business environment. I just put some things down because I had to get to work. So yeah, so the structure was just sort of loosely formatted on stuff I've done before. I would love to hear more ideas. So I heard one idea is that you're going to duplicate the sheet. What other thing are you going to try to do?
We can collate but that would be very messy. To add the results of this week on top of this sheet, that would be quite messy.
Yeah, so you can add it to this sheet, but it would be messy. Why would it be messy?
Because it would be difficult to isolate the results per week, or now to see how each person, it would be difficult for each person to see at which week and where they could improve at which week.
Yeah, it would be hard to see the weekly pieces. Yeah, if we add it to the sheet, right? So that means you have a very particular way in mind that you would want to modify this week, or you would want to add it. What are you thinking? Actually, yeah. So which one are you leaning to? So
I'm leaning for.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm leaning towards the duplicate.
Okay, great. So the duplicate. Now the problem I see with the duplicate is that it would be hard for me to see an overview. If I want to see an overview, and I very much want to see an overview, especially when you look at that sort of running total, that the term running total, have you heard that before?
No, not yet.
Yeah, so a subtotal or a total is going to be just a sum, but a running total is going to be one that I'm going to accumulate on an ongoing basis. So it's sort of constantly running. It doesn't stop working. That's a running total.
Okay, so instead of a duplicate sheet, what of duplicate columns, like attended?
Yeah. And that was the second. That was the second option you were referring to, right? Was to duplicate, add to the sheet, or to duplicate the columns in the sheet, right?
No,
So I agree with you. It'll be messy. I'm okay with either way. I think you can make it look good with either option. I want you to pick which option you're going to work with, and that's what we're going to use for the remaining 6 weeks.
Oof. I don't know.
Well, then do a coin toss. If you really don't know, throw a coin, flip a coin. Oh, I want to see what coin you're using too. I'm sure you're using a coin I don't use.
Let me get. Oh, yes, I do have a coin. Okay, so it's a 20 bob coin.
Cool. Muya, what country are you in?
Kenya.
You're in Kenya, right?
Yes. Okay. So heads is for duplicate columns. Tails is for duplicate page.
Great.
Okay. It's tails.
Okay, so that's duplicate page. Wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So I'm going to, because we're running a little short on time here, I'm just going to tell you how I want to do this.
Okay.
So I want you to duplicate the sheet, and then I want you to create a third sheet. The third sheet is going to be a reference to the running totals from each of the first sheets.
Okay.
In order for this to work well, the third sheet should have a VLOOKUP. Have you used a VLOOKUP before?
No, not yet.
Okay, wonderful. So VLOOKUP is sort of a standard tool that we use when we use Excel spreadsheets, and Google Sheets has implemented it as well. It's a vertical lookup. It'll be pretty easy to understand, I think, if you look up a definition of how to do it. But my request to you, if you're open to this, and you can say no, is that you do the third sheet after we're done with the session. But right now, you make this the duplicate for this week, and you start filling it out. Does that work for you?
Yes, that actually worked.
Okay, great. And then I'm going to make one other request of you. I'd like you to add a column. I would like you to make space for 2 columns, and just leave them blank for now. And then I'll put some content in there.
In the week 2 sheet, or in the running total? Great
question. In the week 2, and actually, what we'll also do is we'll change J, instead of being the running total. This is this week's total, and your duplicate sheet is going to have this week's total, and then your brand new overall sheet, the overall sheet will have the running total. Okay. And then one other thing I just want to name here, I just want to point out for you. what we're doing here is data visualization. The thing that I really, really want people to see is a clear understanding that they can look at immediately and something goes off in their mind. Like you look at this sheet and you see without a doubt, there are a couple people who contributed extensively and a lot of people didn't show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very quick, you get a lot of information the minute you look at it. And the things that are missing though, you'll see in column F and column H, it's not clear that column F and column H are worth a lot more in the way I've set this up than the other columns. So that you can see that's a poor element of our data visualization. That's something that to be improved upon. So when we think about how am I trying to influence the people I'm trying to influence, in this particular instance, I'm trying to influence them with something that's visually appealing and easy to understand. So I don't want to talk about it too much. I just want it to be quick and obvious.
Okay.
Cool?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So with that, and then I think we talked a little bit about the main questions, how to influence people, who do I communicate to first? The people I decided to communicate to first when we were in this case were people I needed support from, because I have too few hours right now to run this sheet, right? So I needed support to build the sheet. Also, you and David last time acted as somebody to bounce my ideas off of because you are students in the particular situation I'm trying to influence. So in the case where I'm trying to influence dozens of people, taking the time to interact one-on-one with a couple of people who are in the situation I'm trying to influence informs my own thinking.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give you the answer for the questions that the group has been discussing.
Okay. So I'm just trying to work on the sheet right now and make some modifications.
Sounds good.
Okay. So for the last sheet, you've mentioned two things. The used video and volume and spoken session have greater weights, and you'd like that to be visualized.
Sorry, just so you know, I'm inviting everyone back, but what did you?
I'm saying the used video and the spoken session have greater weight, and you'd like to see that visualized a bit, yeah?
If you would like, if you're willing to take that on, that would be great.
Okay, I would be willing, but I'm not too sure I have the time as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, yeah,
So
okay.
whatever you're able to do.
Let me give it a shot.
Please.
Okay.
Welcome back, David. Welcome back, Gerald.
And just next time I have nominated myself, I will. I have nominated myself for next week's session. I will remain.
For volunteering, you saying? Brilliant. All right, so
I get to ask you some questions,
This is true. Do all of you have a session before this one on Mondays?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's tough. I was hoping I could just make like the few minutes before the session, open time. I'll try to do that next week, but this week I think
we can talk. We can talk to Yabi. We can talk to Yabi.
Oh, okay. If it's something he can move forward 30 minutes, actually, it might be better to do it afterwards. So let me just do that. I'll try to just keep the 30 minutes after the sessions as time that anyone can hang out. This week I cannot do that. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Welcome back, everybody. What was the conclusion to your conversations? Did anyone have an answer to the first and second question? Let's start with the first question. How do you know who is making the decision that your data analysis is meant to influence?
Should I go first?
Yeah, you're welcome to.
Okay, so I was with Jeanette in the same meeting room, and the conclusion that we reached is, for the first question is, if you scrutinize well the problem that you are solving as a data scientist, the question that you've been asked, then this can give you an idea of who will be in top in influencing, making decision using your data analysis. And we looked at last week's challenge that we had as an example. We were predicting the client subscription of Portugal Bank, and we said that this challenge came from the marketing team of Portugal Bank. So, and we were trying to figure out that the top marketing manager of Portugal Bank might be the person who will be influential in using our data analysis. Thank you.
Great, David. Yeah, great. So you thought about the specific question from last time, the challenge you had, and you decided that it would be a marketing manager. Great job, Jeanette and David. Absolutely wonderful. So now who do you communicate with first in that instance, that example?
Should I answer that again or someone else to go?
Actually, I would love, yeah, thank you for asking, David. Let's let someone else go. Jeanette, if you want to join, I'd love to hear your voice. If someone else wants to share, I would love to hear that as well.
Okay.
And
Hello.
hello, we can hear you.
Yeah, me and David, we decided that the first person to communicate about the analysis that we made would be first the boss or someone who gave the task that we have done. Because whenever we are in a job, the protocols in a job may be, they matter a lot. You can't communicate your analysis to the CEO while you have the chief of the IT department maybe. Yeah, that's what we decided.
Brilliant. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Janet. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to try to go to the CEO or to the senior executives when the person who asked you for the analysis is still available to talk to and has not yet said what they're ready to do with that analysis. Absolutely right. But I would actually disagree with you. In that instance, I would not go to the marketing manager first. If they actually have the title of marketing manager, and if we're talking about a large bank, I would assume that they have employees that work for them. And if this is my first time working with that marketing manager, I would probably actually check with their employees about the analysis first. And I would ask the employees not, do you like the analysis? I would ask the employees, what do you think the marketing manager, your boss, is going to say about this analysis? So when I first start at the company, my goal is to get a lay of the land. And Jeanette, to your point, this is a great point. There's a protocol to how I introduce this information. I don't know that protocol because I just joined this company. And I don't care what anyone tells you, every single company's culture is incredibly different. In fact, everything I'm suggesting that you try to do during these video calls, this is an example of the questions to be asking yourself. I don't guarantee that any of the behaviors you do on this video call will be what you should do in your next job. But what you need to do during this video call and in your next job is keep asking yourself, what is the protocol? What behaviors are valuable for the people who are in power in this situation, in this environment? What is going to help me move forward in this environment? So you want to keep asking yourself those questions, and it's going to be different based on where you are, right? Based on the culture and the company and the people in charge, right? So in this environment, I have a little bit of power. I'll try to talk next week about what power looks like and how it gets managed. But I want you to keep thinking about what questions you ask. But Jeanette and David, this is a great point. Understanding the protocols of the environment. Yeah, Nahom, go ahead.
So, thank you. So sometimes we're not directly employed, and sometimes our analysis may be self-initiated. So I was matched with Brian and Victoria in a breakout room. So we discussed, sometimes we try to, tackle, look for problems in our country and tackle them. For example, on week 3, we were trained on how to use Bayesian inference to, model the future and forecast the future of the transmission of COVID-19. So on such cases, we're not directly, being supervised, or we're not directly, told to do this and that. So on those cases, we should look for who exactly is more concerned and more responsible to, avert the crisis that COVID-19 can bring about. So in this case, it is most probably the Ministry of Health of the country. So on those cases, we should directly approach them, or maybe the media. So we should try to contact the media first. That is better, because Ministry of Health has so many bureaucracies that you should pass through. So we directly communicate with the media, but they're actually the decision makers that our analysis is going to have an impact or an influence. So that is what we tried to discuss. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Are you open to some feedback on that?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So same response I have that I had for David and Jeanette. I think you nailed something important here. There's other analysis you may be doing that is not targeted inside of an organization. You do not have an authority figure that you're relating to directly. And so in that situation, you operate differently. The feedback I would give you on this is, and also you're naming the media as a good group to influence, a good target audience for that work. Also, I want you to remember, in that instance, as a data scientist, you are producing a media. In fact, in many of our jobs, what we are doing is we're producing collateral, some kind of visualization, some kind of analysis or report card that someone else will be using. In the case of the bank, we may never meet the CEO. In fact, I was very lucky to meet the CEO of IBM, and I worked hard for it, but I was lucky. There are a lot of other people who worked hard as well, who their data analysis the CEO saw, but the CEO never met them, right? So in many ways, we are also media producers. We just produce sort of the scientific analytical media, right? So I want you to keep that in mind. So now, as a media creator, when you produce something that you want another media outlet to pick up, you want the news, the typical news, the radio to notice what you're putting out there. You might influence them in different ways. You might actually contact them, but you might also just try to get a following online. So in that case, to me, you have two audiences. You have mainstream media as your audience, and you also have the general public as your audience, as you said as well. And so now with the general public, I'm going to offer you a tool that you can use and to sort of think about who you have or how you want to influence people. So I'm actually looking for a good template for this tool. I'm not finding it right now, so I'm just going to give you the name of the tool because I've been consistently impressed by how good all of you are at doing your research. So the name of the tool is either called audience mapping or power mapping. I've also seen it called affiliation mapping or agreement mapping. The general idea of this tool is for you to be able to tell if somebody falls into one of four categories. Do they agree with you? Sorry, are they actively, I want to say it's active allies is the term. Are they active allies? Are they passive allies? Are they neutral? Are they passive opponents, or are they active opponents? In the case of COVID-19, you might be trying to convince the general population to wear masks. And you want to demonstrate to the population that wearing masks is important because the transmission rates are very high and that this is not a normal flu, right? So maybe really you're just trying to convince people this is not the normal flu, right? In that situation, you will find there are people that oppose your perspective and are trying to convince the general population everything is okay. They are actively trying to convince. So those are your active opponents. Then there are people who like agree with you, but they're not really telling anyone. They don't really care. They don't think it's their job to tell anyone, right? They agree, they don't want to say anything. Those are your passive allies. The way you influence your passive allies is very different from how you influence your active allies. So your data analysis, your visualization, your entire piece of media, completely different for these two different groups. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. One other thing, when Muyu and I were talking about, if you're trying to target a large population, test your media. test your piece of content. So talk to one or two people directly after you've created it, similar to what I said before, and just get their reaction. What do you think about this? In that case, when you're trying to do a general population, you want the individual person's reaction. They're gonna often tell you, oh, I think people will like it or don't like it. No, 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 no. Don't tell me what you think other people think. Just tell me what you think. When you're trying to have someone represent a population, you want them to tell you exactly what they think. When you're trying to get somebody to help you understand how a boss thinks, then you want them to say, how does this boss usually respond to? And then you pick specific criteria or attributes to your piece of content. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, cool. Give me a thumbs up if for everyone else listening, if what I've shared so far if anything's resonating. Okay, great. I want you to check out another tool on the business side. This is called a RACI map. RACI model. It stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and influenced. In any decision-making process inside of an organization, there are people who are accountable. That means at the end of the day, whatever decision is made, whatever actions are taken, if something goes wrong, we're going to point fingers at them. Generally, when you look at government systems, you're talking about the executive branch. You're talking about the president, the dictator, the prime minister, whoever it might be. In a corporation, you can say that if the business is overall successful, the CEO is accountable. But then for things like decisions like the marketing analysis that you did for last week in Portugal Bank, the CEO might fire the chief marketing officer if something goes wrong in a marketing campaign, right? So, and the CEO will say, it's not my fault. It was the marketing guy's fault. And he puts it on the news. Hey, the marketing guy, I fired him, right? So then that makes that person accountable, right? The ultimate decision maker in any decision is the person who's accountable. The people who are responsible are the ones who are supporting the actual action that'll be taken out. So often in the situation where you are trying to influence the accountable person, but people who will actually use the details of your analysis are the people who are responsible for actually acting on the information. So the manager might have been the one who made the decision, and then their employees were the ones who decided if they were going to, how much money they're going to spend on the different campaigns, right? The employees might actually decide what ads they're going to buy. Maybe the manager said, I want to spend 30% of the money on the thing we used to do and 70% on the new analysis that we did during our A/B testing. But the employees will then do the ad buying. They will actually go and do the marketing work using that general estimation. And they might have specific questions for you. Remember, the people who are responsible work with the person who's accountable. So whatever happens in your analysis, people will come back and ask you. If a decision is made off of your analysis, they'll come back and ask you, can I get a follow-up analysis? Can I understand what subgroup you saw were actually in, one versus the A section or the B section? You might have said, hey, there's a certain cluster of the customer group that actually enjoyed the traditional advertising and a certain group that enjoyed a new version of advertising. The staff who's responsible for making the changes will want to ask you about that. And the decision maker, if they find out that you can't actually support the staff, that loses trust. So whenever you put out an analysis, one of the things you want to keep in mind is what are the follow-up questions people are going to have. You want to keep that in mind for two reasons. One, you might want to answer that right away. Two, you might actually be able to just prepare for knowing how long it's going to take you to answer that question. Often what happens in a company, in an organization, is they don't give you enough time to do your analysis. So what you need to do is you need to prepare sometimes what I call is the appetizer. You give them what they ask for and you make it really exciting and enjoyable. And they take that and then they'll say to you, great, I want more. And you say, okay, I can get you more and I've already thought about it. Here's the amount of time I need. Here's the amount of resources I need. Maybe I need to be able to speak to your team. Sometimes they don't give you access to their team because their team's too busy. So you might say, maybe I need to speak to your team. So these are all kinds of things you want to be thinking about. Okay, so I went a little bit deeper than I wanted to, but ultimately consulted, you are aiming to be the one who's consulted. As a data scientist, that is your goal. With all of the decisions that are happening, the important ones that in your mind that are important, you want to be the one who's consulted. So I want you to take the time, understand RACI models, and you can do that outside the class. Since we're short on time, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about one more topic, and then I'll ask you some questions, and then I will leave before you discuss the questions, and I'll just leave Zoom so you can open, so you can talk about it in the breakout rooms. Does that work for everyone? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can manage without me? All right, I believe in you. So the next question I want to ask you is, what relationships do people have with data? What relationships do people have with data? And then the follow-up to that is, how does that influence what you share with them in your analysis? So I'm going to give you a few of my thoughts, since I'm not going to discuss this with you afterwards. If I'm talking to my mother, she's a physician, she's intelligent, she's a surgeon actually, so she's very capable. To Amuyu's story from last time, by the way, my mom is actually the doctor who would operate on me. I know that she's intelligent. However, when I try to tell her about an article I have read, and I try to describe the R squared or the scientific methodology, she doesn't get it. She's not interested, right? She's very religious, right? My family is Muslim. Although I'm not a practicing Muslim, my family is practicing. And she will start talking to me about what Allah has to say. And she'll start talking to me about what her mullah has to say. And now, I respect her religion and I respect how she thinks. And if I have a decision that we're making together, why would I fight her, right? I saw in Slack that you had a conflict resolution assignment. It's not my place to decide if Allah exists or doesn't exist, or how Allah shows up in the world, right? What it is my place to do is to engage with her about decisions that are important. Right now, we're talking about some financial decisions that affect her and affect me. And I need to use whatever skills I have to influence her without offending her. Now, there are times where I have discussed financial decisions and I have been able to put an analysis together that was easy for her to understand. But I know that when I talk about probabilities, it's not as easy for her to understand. So I talk to her about probabilities very differently than I talk to my business partner. My business partner, on the other hand, is somebody who has studied philosophy and studied computer science and has studied data science. So now when I talk to him, he, by the way, hates spirituality and hates religion. If I ever talk to him about, hey, some things are things we just can't know, he will get frustrated with me, you know? So I have to always be talking very much in this data science, quantified Bayesian kind of way. So I keep this in mind when I talk to my audience, right? How do they like to consume information, right? If I tell my mom the science says, right? If I really slowly walk her through the thinking without really talking about science and without making it clear that I'm talking about statistics, she's interested in my thinking, right? She's interested in relating to me. With my business partner, if I tell him, this is how I feel, this is what my intuition has to say, I think Lawal last time had referenced intuition. If I talk about intuition, he's not gonna like it, right? But if I start talking more about the likelihood of something happening, he's gonna get it. So I want you to think about that a little bit. I want you to talk to your partner about these two questions. What relationship do different people have? I've already given you a couple of examples. I want you to specifically talk about the people in your life that you want to influence on a daily basis. Think about your parents, think about your family, think about your friends. If you're currently working, think about the current job you're in. If you're at school, think about your professor. I want you to ask yourself, how about the people in your life? Think about science, pseudoscience, spirituality, religion. How do all these aspects play into how they relate to data? And the homework you'll have for this week is to use anything we have discussed today to influence one person in your life on one decision. If you can't influence somebody who loves you and believes in you right now, God forbid, God help you when you actually get into the work environment, right? So I really encourage you to now think about this. You've already tried a few times to use data and analysis to make your own decisions. Now I want you to try to help in group decisions or in other people's decisions. Be thoughtful and be kind. Do not force anything on anybody. That will go badly, I guarantee you, right? So don't try to force anything. Be smart, be considerate, be thoughtful. How can you support someone else's decision-making? Whether it's a decision you're making with them or they're making without you. They're making completely on their own. How can you support someone else's decision-making and give it a shot? In the next 1 week, try to influence one decision, very intentionally, one decision using data. Find some kind of data, use one, and use that to influence the decision. So give me a thumbs up if you understood the assignment. All right, great. So who did we say was note-taking today? Brian. Brian, where are you taking notes? Is there any chance you can copy your notes into the Google document that we have?
Yes, I'm look at the end of the Google document. That's from week 3.
Oh, okay, great. So just so everyone knows, and Brian, for you, thank you. These are great notes. I do my note taking in reverse order, so that whenever you open up a document, the first thing you see is the most relevant thing.
Okay, great. I'll copy them to the top.
I beat you to it. I did it first. So now all the notes that Brian's been taking are at the top of the document, everyone. And Brian, thank you for these great notes. I can already see that these are very thorough. Thank you for that. Okay, so before I let you have your group discussions, you know what time it is? Does everyone know what time it is? I think I saw Stephanie say it, but her mic was muted.
No, I don't. I have no idea. Time to fill out the feedback form.
Yes, you have 100% idea. Do not say you have no idea. Again, I want to remind you, right? Confidence is key. Do not say you have no idea. You absolutely had 100% idea. All right, so I'm going to give everyone the feedback form. For those of you who are new this week, as a good data scientist, I'm always collecting data. And one of those pieces of data is how the session was for you. I want your feedback. So please take 5 minutes. I'll hang out on the line in case anyone has questions. And then after 5 minutes, I'll put you in breakout rooms. And actually, when you finish the feedback form, just message in the chat or give me. Actually, I can see how many submissions we get. Never mind. So actually, what I'll do is once we get about, let's say, 10 submissions, I'll start creating the breakout rooms.